Hey guys, I'm Paradise One, and today I've made a detailed PvP guide for marksmanship hunters. So in this guide, I'm going to cover everything you need to have a strong core understanding of the spec. In the near future, I'm going to be making additional guides going over more advanced topics, but this guide would be a great place to start if you're trying to play a marksman hunter in PvP. I'm going to be covering a variety of topics throughout the guide, and these include the best races, your gear, enchant gems, and stat priority, the different talent builds and honor talents you would be running and when you would use them, how you want to do your damage, the strengths and weaknesses of the spec, your best comps to run, as well as a section for add-ons and macros, and I will briefly touch on pets. And with that, let's dive right in. To start it off, I want to go over which races are the best for Marksman Hunter. Now, right now, Human is by far the strongest race for Marksman Hunter or any hunter in general. And that's because of the racial ability Will to Survive. Now, what this is a 3-minute cooldown, essentially PvP trinket, but it only works on stun effects. Now, the reason this is good is say you're fighting something where the only thing you're going to need to trinket out of would be a stun. You can now replace your medallion with 2 damage trinkets, which will significantly increase your damage. Next best race would be, in my opinion, Night Elf. You get the Shadow Meld racial, which is very versatile, has many different uses. You could, drop your enemy's targeting to avoid crowd control, polymorph, or fear, for example. You can use it to essentially feign death. You can reset your combat and get a camouflage off. Or you could even just use it to immune damage. So for example, if a Chaos Bolt is in the air or a Glacial Spike, you can use it when it's about to hit you and it will negate the whole thing. The next best race, in my opinion, are the Dwarves, the Dark Iron Dwarf and the Regular Dwarf. Now, their racial ability isn't as strong in the current meta. What it does is it will dispel you of all bleeds, poisons, magic effects, and diseases, and give you a benefit based on which race you choose. So Dark Iron would give you a damage increase, while Regular Dwarf would give you a damage reduction. Now this racial shines when the meta consists of classes that have a lot of bleeds or poisons, like Feral Druids and Assassination Rogues, but in the current meta, you don't get that much value out of it. So right now I would put that at number 3. The last race I wanted to go over is Orc. Now Orc is okay right now. It has a really strong on-use damage buff, which is pretty good. But generally, in the past at least, you would take it for the hardiness passive. What that does is it will reduce your stuns received by 20%. And that sounds really good. However, right now, in the current state of the game, you can get a crafted PvP item, as well as the set bonus for your PvP trinkets. And this will reduce the duration of all crowd control, not just stuns, by 15%. And this does not stack with the racial, which means the racial is only giving you a 5% stun reduction. Now, the difference between this season and next season is that next season they're doing a huge revamp to crowd control. They're reducing the duration of almost every single CC in the game. And since every CC is reduced and they are also removing this set bonus here, the Orc racial is going to get a lot more value. So next season I would really think about becoming an Orc. Now that we've got the races out of the way, let's go over the gear and stat priority. So for Marksman, your best stats are going to be Mastery and Versatility, followed by Crit and Haste. Now you're not going to be able to get the perfect stats setup with the PvP gear available, as there's only certain pieces you can get, but I've set up a set here that has the most optimized stats that you can get in PvP. So we're going to be using the Haste Verse Handguards, the Haste Verse Chain Belt, the Haste Verse Chain Breeches for legs, the crafted PvP boots, which also have Haste Verse on them, the Crimson Gladiator Signet, which gives versatility and mastery. You want to get the crafted ring with versatility and mastery. If you're a human, you use both the damage trinkets. If you are not a human, you'll be using a medallion, as well as I would recommend the badge, since it lines up better with your burst and it synergizes better with how Marksman plays. You're going to want to use the hand cannon gun, crit verse, the Verse Mastery Chain Wrist Guards, the Verse Mastery Chain Tunic, the Verse Mastery Shawl, and Elemental Lariat for the necklace with also Verse Mastery. And the last 2 pieces here, I just wanted to note, they are set bonuses, but we are not using it for the set bonus. The Marksman set bonus is not that great, so we're using these for the stats. See, the shoulders have Verse Mastery. There are no shoulders other than this that have Mastery on them. And the helmet has crit and mastery, with high stat being mastery. There is no other helmet with mastery on them. So we're using these for the stats, not the set bonus. Now next we're going to go over gems. Gems, I use 70 mastery and 33 versatility in every single socket. Some people value verse a little more, some people value mastery a little bit more. I personally try to go for more mastery with a decent amount of verse. I don't think you can go right or wrong either way. You just really want to make sure you have as much versatility and as much mastery as you can get. And finally, for enchants, I use the homebound speed for the cloak, accelerated agility for the chest, 200 speed for the bracers. I use the fierce armor kit, the planesrunner breeze for the boots, and again, I right now have 82 versatility on my rings. You could also put mastery there. Again, as long as you're stacking mastery and versatility mainly, you're doing great. And finally, you use the high intensity thermal scanner scope for your gun enchant. So now I'm going to go over the different builds you're going to want to use as marksman in PvP. There are 3 main builds that you can run. One of them is the explosive shot build with salvo. This is more for AoE in arenas. The other one is for single target. So what this does is it allows you to do higher single target pressure and less AoE. And then the final one is an RBG build. So this one is focusing on a lot more cleave, as much cleave as you possibly can get. So the first build I'm going to go over is the explosive shot build. This is an AoE build for arena. So the way you use this build is you use explosive shot as well as volley and salvo to get damage out while you're getting trained or when you can't stand there and aim shot. So how this works is, say for example, I'm getting trained by a warrior in a ret or whatever melee DPS. If you want to aim shot, you got to stand still. I can't kite and aim shot. And outside of my rapid fire and arcane shot, a lot of my damage is aim shot. So I'm going to be missing a lot of damage. So what you're going to do is you're going to use a combination of explosive shotting to do some AoE damage, as well as salvo and volley. Now salvo makes your next volley apply explosive shot to 2 targets. So if I press salvo and volley, it's going to put 2 up, which will cleave them both. It's also going to give the trick shots effect. Now real quick, what that does is it makes your next aim shot or rapid fire ricochet. So that's going to cleave as well. So what you're doing is you're essentially putting up explosive shots, which will explode for good AoE damage, as well as, since you're kiting, your next rapid fire is going to cleave. So it's going to be doing your explosive shot damage as well as cleaving all of the targets, and you can do that while running. So that's the advantage of using this build. So this next build I'm going to go over is the single target arena build, or the Serpent Sting build. Now the difference between this build and the last one is we took out salvo, we took out explosive shot, and we've applied Hunter's Knowledge, which increases your aim shot and rapid fire critical strike chance, as well as Serpent Sting and Poison Injection. Now it's pretty obvious to see increased critical strike chance on your main abilities. That's going to increase your pressure single target. And the Serpent Sting and Poison Injection will also increase your single target damage, and I'll show you how that works. So what happens is when you have a Serpent Sting applied to your target, whether you press Serpent Sting or aim shot, and it will also apply a Serpent Sting with this talent, which I'll go over these later, it will put up a stacking debuff called Latent Poison. What this does is after 10 stacks, it'll do an additional amount of damage on your next aim shot based on how many stacks there are when you do it. So as you can see, I'm at 8 on this one. If I aim shot, it's going to consume them and do an additional damage and consume the stacks. So this is going to increase your single target pressure by a good amount. This last build I'm going to go over is a rated battleground build for marksman. You use this build on team fight maps or any time you're going to be in a team fight, which as marksman that's generally your role. Now the differences between this build and the explosive shot build, there are a few. Now we do have salvo and volley in this build, but we now have spec'd into the trick shots talent. Now like I said before, volley will apply trick shots while it's up, but now we can multi-shot and apply trick shots when you hit 3 or more targets with it. And since we're going to be in a team fight most of the time, there's a good chance you can get a good amount of uptime on trick shots. And just to go over that again, when you have the trick shots buff, All of your aim shots and and rapid fires will ricochet. So as you can see, they're bouncing back and forth and cleaving. So that's a really good way to cleave your enemies in an RPG. The other things that we have changed is we've removed poison injection and changed it to Hydra Bite. What this does is it lets your Serpent Sting, or when you aim shot and apply Serpent Sting, will cleave. It'll put 2 additional ones up and increase its damage. So this will also help you get a little bit more pressure out in a team fight situation. Now before I go to the next section on honor talents, I just wanted to cover a couple different talents where you have an option and when you would switch them and which one you would want. Now for these other talents here, I've optimized the spec pretty well. I'm going to have a link into the description of all 3 of these specs. You don't really have to worry about it. And these are all pretty self-explanatory. You can just go through them and read them yourself and see what they do. Now, as far as different options, there's a few of them that we might be changing given the situation. The first one is Survival of the Fittest. This is your defensive cooldown that will reduce your damage you take. Normally it's 20% and not 40. But if you take this talent here, Nature's Endurance, it becomes 40. The other option will reduce the cooldown and increase its duration, but it will be a 20% damage reduction. Now, Marksman Hunter and all hunters in general are pretty squishy, so it's always going to be better to have the stronger defensive cooldown, even if it is not as long, and even if it is a longer cooldown. The next talent I want to go over here is Scattershot and Binding Shot. I generally always take Scattershot for Arena. Binding Shot has its uses, however. You can use it against, say, pets, if you're fighting a Demonology Warlock, if you're fighting a Beast Mastery Hunter. You can use this to peel the pets off and get some distance and reduce some damage. So there is some use to that, although I generally use Scattershot. The next one I'm going to go over is Intimidation Stun and High Explosive Trap. So Intim Stun is a 5-second stun on a minute cooldown. In Arena, I always take this. There's no better option. Having your own stun to either help you peel, help you stun kill target, get your own trap is just far too strong to not have. Now, High Explosive Trap is strong for rated battlegrounds on certain maps. Being able to knock players on Z-axes has a very high value in rated battlegrounds. So for example, if you're on the middle of Eye of the Storm, you can grip somebody to the ledge and you can High Explosive Trap to knock them flat off the map. You can also use it to knock off of nodes, such as all the nodes in Eye of the Storm. There's a ledge, blacksmith lumber mill in Arathi Basin. There's a bunch of different opportunities where you can use this in a rated battleground and get a significant amount of value from it. So the last talent I'm going to quickly go over here is Surging Shots and Lethal Shots for choices. Surging Shots will 100% always be the choice. Lethal Shots pales in comparison to Surging Shots. You will never take this talent. Finally, I just want to go over a couple talents that are utility that I might not be able to explain in another part of the video and how they function. So the first one I'm going to go over is Sentinel Owl. Now what this does is, if any of you played Shadowlands, the Kyrian Arrow ability, it allows you to shoot through the walls. Now the problem with this one, it is a slightly nerfed version. The circle is much smaller and they have to stay in the circle in order to hit them through the wall. Now it's still good to run as marksman, as I'm sure many of you have experienced the frustration of being lined the whole game. So for example here, how it works is, if I want to shoot this dummy right here, right? I'm out of line of sight, I can't hit him, but I can drop the Sentinel Owl and now I can shoot him through the wall. So there's a lot of ways you can use this and get your damage off a lot better. In addition to that, if you are running one of the other builds, I run the Sentinel's Perception talent along with that. This just gives the same effect, but now all of your party members can use it. So for example, if you're playing with a Disc Priest and they can do damage to heal, so it lets them hit the enemy through the pillar, get more damage out. If you're playing with a Feral Druid, you can Feral Leap through the wall. Actually, you can Shadow Step through the wall. So there's a lot of value to running this in most builds. This build, the Salvo Explosive Shot one, I don't have enough talent points to reach that. So I do run it in the single target one, but it definitely has value. Alright, now that we've gone over your regular talent trees, I'm going to go over the honor talents. There's a bunch of honor talents that there is for marksmen, and a lot of them have their uses in certain situations. Now, first I want to go over Survival Tactics and Roar of Sacrifice. These two talents are pretty much staple. I run them almost every single arena, and I'll just go through each honor talent and explain what they do and when you want to use them. So the first one I'm going to go over is Survival Tactics. Now what this does is it'll dispel all harmful magic effects and reduce the damage you take by 90% for a second and a half. So this is very strong for obvious reasons, being able to dispel yourself of magic effects. So you can dispel yourself of all dots. So for example, if you're fighting a Warlock or a Shadow Priest, you can remove those flat out. You can also use it to remove roots or slows and whatnot. If you're got a Frost Nova on you, you can dispel yourself with that. You can also use it for the secondary part, the damage reduction. So for example, if I'm here and a Chaos Bolt is flying at me or a Glacial Spike, if I feign death while it's in the air, you see up there, it was pretty quick, but you get the damage reduction. So the bolt hitting you or the Glacial Spike will be 90% reduced. So that's one of the other ways you can use it to get extreme value out of your feigned death. Next is Roar of Sacrifice. This will make your pet protect a friendly target from critical strikes. So if the target I put it on will not be able to receive a critical strike. And this is strong into a lot of different classes. Any class that has a very high crit value, or you get a lot of damage from crits. So for example, mages, or ret paladins, rogues, warriors. There's a whole slew of classes that you would get a lot of value of this from. The classes that you won't get much value is rot comps. So I would say like Affliction Warlock, Shadow Priest, and the like. You would get more value using other honor talents, which I'll go over later. Next is Chimera Sting. This is a 3-part ability. It will do damage initially, and then it will do 3 different venoms applying 3 seconds after each other. So the first one will reduce their movement speed, the second one following will silence them, and then the third one will do a 20% reduction to damage and healing. So this has a lot of different uses. You can initially just use it to silence an enemy, a healer or whatnot, but you can also use it as a combo. So what I like to do a lot is I'll stun a target and then I'll apply this silence. So you can see the slow is happening, but now they both end at the same time. Now they're silenced out, so that will extend your CC chain and then put up the damage and healing reduction. So there's a bunch of different ways you can use it, and it's very versatile. Covering the other honor talents, Dragonsteel Armor reduces magic damage over time effects to you. Like I was saying before, rot comps such as Shadow Priests and Warlocks, if they have no crit value on your team, I generally will replace Roar of Sacrifice for Dragonsteel Armor. But other than that, that's really the only use I would take that for. True Shot Mastery will reduce your True Shot cooldown and fully restore your focus. This is okay. Sometimes I'll run it in RBGs to get more value out of my burst, but generally there's going to be other talents that you're going to take that are going to give you more value. Ranger's Finesse is when you cast Aim Shot, it reduces the cooldown of your 2 major defensives by 5 seconds. Now, in an arena, you're not getting enough aim shots out generally, and especially in this melee heavy meta, to get any value out of this whatsoever. So in arena, I would never take this, and in rated battlegrounds, there are just far more choices that will give you much more value. Sniper Shot is a really strong single target spell. It does 20% of the target's maximum health and physical damage, so it doesn't matter what their health is, it will do 20%, and it'll increase the range of all of your attacks by 40% for 6 seconds. So the strength in this, I don't really use it in arena, there's just not a good time you're going to get value out of standing there and casting a Sniper Shot. But in rated battlegrounds, there's a lot you can do with this, especially against any target that has a damage increase. So say you're on the Temple of Kotmogu map, and an enemy has an orb and they have a high stack, they're taking more damage. The Sniper Shot will essentially just one-shot them sometimes with high enough stacks. The stacking the 20% maximum health stacked with that damage increase will just flat out one-shot them. Same with Warsong Gulch or Twin Peaks. If the flag carrier has high stacks, you get a lot of value for hitting them with the Sniper Shot. Hunting Pack reduces the cooldown of your aspect of the cheetah and gives it to allies within 15 yards. I really like this honor talent, and I kind of wish it was a baseline talent you can choose, because I love this idea of being able to speed your allies up, but it's just not worth taking as an honor talent over any of these other options in most situations. Tranquilizing darts is an interesting talent. When you interrupt or tranquilizing shot an enemy, which is your offensive purge, it releases 8 darts, and each dart will reduce the duration of a beneficial magic effect by 4 seconds. Now the value in this is, say you're fighting a Resto Druid and they have a bunch of heal over times up, right? If they get to low duration, you can essentially trank shot and you can almost remove all of the hots at once if they're lower duration, or you'll have to make it so the druid has to reapply them much more frequently using his mana. You can also use this against other classes, like for example Mistweaver monks. Their main healing comes from their 2 heal over times, their Enveloping Mist and Renewing Mist, assuming they're not fist weaving. And your trank shot will get one of them, and the darts will remove the other. So you're removing their 2 strong heals in just one button. Consecutive Concussion slows their enemy movement speed by an additional 20%, making your concussive shot 70% slow, and steady shotting 3 times will stun the enemy for 4 seconds. So you're really not getting this for the stun part, more so for the bigger slow. And the value out of this is mainly on flag carry maps against Demon Hunter tanks. Their strength is being able to outrun everybody to kite really far, but having a really far range 70% slow that you can maintain on them will really ruin their mobility and help your team to catch up. Wild Kingdom is more of a situational talent for Beastmaster and Survival, not so much Marksman, but I'll explain what it does really quickly. What this does is it will tag out your current pet, and it will tag in one from your stable for 10 seconds. So, and when your old pet comes back, it'll be healed a little bit. So what you use this for is, say I'm a Beast Mastery Hunter, all of my damage is my pet, right? So they're hitting my pet, Gregory here's about to die. I can Wild Kingdom, he'll tag out for another pet who's temporary. After 10 seconds, this pet is going to go back to the stable, Gregory's going to come back, and he's going to be at full health. So it kind of like delays them from killing your pet. If a team wants to kill your pet, they could eventually do it, but this will give you an extra way to keep your pet up and keep getting your damage out. Now, Interlope is one of my favorite spells in the game. I get a lot of cool clips in Rated Battlegrounds ninjaing bases with it. What it does is the next hostile spell that is casted on the target you put it on will be redirected to your pet. So essentially you put Interlope on a target, yourself or a friendly ally. It lasts 45 seconds, but the next time they're hit with a single target spell, that spell and all single target spells will go to your pet if it's within 10 yards. Now it's a really cool ability, but you really wouldn't take this in any situation in Arena or if you're playing Marksman in general. Finally, there's Diamond Ice, which makes your freezing trap undispellable, and like a cyclone you can't be damaged or healed in it, but reduces the duration to 5 seconds. Now the trap for using this is when you fight things with a dispel for your trap, like a Demon Hunter with a reverse or a priest with mass dispel. So people will try to use it and say, okay, well now I have a trap, they can't get rid of it. But the problem is that it's way shorter. You're not going to get a lot out of a 5-second CC, which is even shorter with the set bonus CC reduction. So you don't really want to run this. You want to play around your team to cover those ways of removing the trap. So for example, stun the DH when you go for the trap, root him. You want to be able to play around it like that and not rely on Diamond Ice so much. So this next section is going to be focusing more on your gameplay. So first, before I go forward, I wanted to go over the different strengths and weaknesses of Marksman in Arena. So the strengths of Marksman is it has very high single target burst, some of the highest in the game. It has pretty good cleave, and it has really strong crowd control and mobility. So what that means is that I have my freezing trap, I have my scatter shot, my stun, my roots, so that's good utility, good crowd control. You have good mobility between your disengage, your pet freedom, your cheetah. You can kite for a long time by yourself without help. And it has, like I said, very strong single target burst. So if you burst properly, you're going to do massive damage if you can get it all off. Now, the weaknesses of Marksman is as follows. while you do really strong damage, you have to kind of stand there to get that strong burst off. So you can rapid fire while moving, you can kill shot and arcane shot while moving, but you can't aim shot while moving, and that's a lot of your damage. The other problem is that aim shot is a pretty long cast. So say this guy's here, I'm shooting him. It doesn't matter sometimes if I'm standing there because they could just step out of line of sight. And now I have to go over here, they line of sight me again, which is of course the value of Sentinel Owl. But it can be very frustrating when your damage is getting lined or stopped by getting trained. And which brings me to the second weakness of Marksman is, while they do have a lot of kiting and mobility potential, they are extremely squishy if you are caught. So it's really important to make sure that if you get caught, you use something to defend yourself, whether it's a cooldown on yourself or your partner uses something. So if you get caught in the middle of a map versus casters, or two melee catch you, you're gonna take massive damage. So now that we've gotten all that stuff out of the way, let's start doing damage. Now for Marksman Hunter, you have 4 main damaging abilities: Kill Shot, Arcane Shot, Aim Shot, and Rapid Fire. And if you're running the Explosive Shot build, you will also have Explosive Shot. So I'm going to go over each ability, when you would use them, and how you would go about using them. So first, Rapid Fire. This is one of your strongest and highest priority abilities. It does a channel of shots that will do damage over the duration. It will reduce the cast time of your next aim shot and generate focus. So this you can do while you're kiting, right? You can't aim shot if you're running, but you can rapid fire if you're running, and it does a really good amount of damage. The next thing I'm going to cover is Kill Shot. One of your regular talents allows it to proc, which means you can use it on targets that are above 80% health. And if you read the tooltip, it's normally only used on enemies less than 80% health. Now, Kill Shot is your highest priority ability. If you ever see a target drop below 20%, or you see it light up like this, it means that you got your death blow proc, then that is your priority. You stop all your other buttons, you press your Kill Shot. That is going to do the most damage possible. The next most important ability is Aim Shot, of course. What this does is it does 50% increased bonus damage if they're above 70% health. That is nerfed in PvP to 20. It'll apply a Serpent Sting to the target, like I had said with this talent here. And it will also cause your next 1 to 2 arcane shots to do increased damage. So if you're going to aim shot, you're going to want to aim shot, and then you're going to get an arcane shot proc, which brings me to the last ability. Arcane shot does okay damage, but you only want to use it when it's lit up like this. That does a 75% damage increase to it. So if it's not lit up, you don't want to press it. It's just a waste of focus. You're not going to get much damage out of it. Now I'm going to go over some of your damaging abilities that are on a longer cooldown, and those are Death Chakram and Explosive Shot. Now Explosive Shot, like I said before, you use it when you can't really stand and do damage. And the way this ability works is it puts up a debuff, not a dot. And when the debuff expires, it will explode and do damage to all targets around it. And like I said, this is very strong when kiting, when you can't stand still and just pump a target. Now one thing you want to remember is that first, it is dispellable, so you want to be mindful of the healer's positioning, whether they have their dispel up if they're in CC. Otherwise, a good healer will probably just dispel it. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that it will break your trap. If the enemies go on your healer or too close, when you get a trap and the explosive shot goes off, it's going to explode and break the trap. Also, we're going to go over Death Chakram. What this does is it puts up a little debuff that will bounce around to targets near it and do increasing damage, give you focus, and increase all damage you deal to the target it hits by 10%. So when you're going to burst, which I'll get to in a minute, this is going to be one of your first priority abilities, and that's because it's going to increase your damage for the next 10 seconds. So you're going to put this up first and then do the rest of your damage. But real quick, I'll show you what it does. You throw out the Death Chakram, it puts up a debuff, it bounces around, and now they're taking increased damage. Now the really cool thing about Death Chakram is that it's smart, so this one will not break CC. If they're right next to them in a trap, it won't bounce to that target. And finally, the last cooldown I'm going to go over is your True Shot. This is your major damage cooldown for Marksman. And what this does is it reduces the cooldown of your aim shot and rapid fire, as well as make your aim shot cast significantly faster, 50% faster, as well as give you a slight buff to your critical strike chance and damage with this talent we took here. So what this is good for when you burst is, you know, I'm aim shotting, okay, I'm doing my damage rotation, whatever. Now we got a setup. So now I'm gonna burst. So I'm gonna put I'll explain the rotation in a second, but now as you can see, my aim shot is much faster and my rapid fire is a much shorter cooldown. So it allows you to get a lot more of your damage out much quicker. It's not like most cooldowns where it's a raw damage increase. It's a damage increase because you can use your abilities much faster. So now I'm going to go over the damage priority, assuming you're not trying to set up a burst window. Just say you're in the middle of a game and you're trying to do damage. So with the explosive shot build, again, the only difference is that you're going to be rotating in salvo and explosive shot while you're kiting. But for the other abilities, first and foremost, if you have a kill shot proc, or if they're in range, that is your button. You stop what you're doing, you press kill shot. That's going to be your biggest damage. Next on the list is rapid fire. You want to keep this on cooldown. You want to make sure that you have as many rapid fires as you can, and you can keep getting those out. After rapid fire, you're going to want to aim shot if you can, right? So if I'm not able to stand there and aim shot, that's when I would kite with the explosive shot. That's when I would try to get, use my rapid fire if I have it available. And then the last thing is your arcane shot. Now, like I said before, when you aim shot, you get a stack of your arcane shot. So then you can use that to do a slightly higher damage arcane shot. And one last thing to note is with this talent here, surging shots, the second part, as you see, aim shot has a 15% chance to reset the cooldown of rapid fire, which is why we want to try to keep it on cooldown if we're just trying to do sustained damage, so that you can try to get those resets and not waste them. So just going about doing damage, in a general scenario, you're in the middle of a game, what I would do is, like I said, kill shot off cooldown, you're going to rapid fire, then you're going to aim shot, arcane shot, you're going to aim shot, you're going to arcane shot, you're going to kill shot if you get a proc, and then you want to use your death chakram, if you're not bursting, to generate focus, so that you can continue to do your damage if you don't have rapid fire back up. And then outside of that, you want to use, like I said, while you're kiting, if I can't aim shot, then I'm explosive shotting, I'm salvo and volleying, and that's how you would do damage, just like between your setups, not while you're bursting. So now I'm going to talk about how to burst as a marksman hunter. So let's just say I'm in an arena game, we get a CC on the healer, and we stun the kill target, and we're ready to do our big damage setup. Now, how you would go about doing that is there's a priority of abilities you want to use. Over here, real quick, as you see my cursor, I have an add-on that will show you the abilities in order, so you can follow along with that if I'm going too quick. But the way we start our burst, if we're running explosive shot, we use that first. If we are not, then it doesn't change the rotation, we just don't use explosive shot first. But assuming you're running it, you put up explosive shot, you death chakram, true shot, then you aim shot, rapid fire, arcane shot, and you just rotate between those. This is going to get you the most damage that you can in that short window. And the only other variable is if you get a kill shot proc, you just stop all this and you kill shot and then continue that rotation of those abilities. Now the reason we do this is because we put up the explosive shot, so that has 3 seconds to trigger. We put up the death chakram to increase the damage taken. Now we true shot to get your damage ability out. And when you aim shot, now the first aim shot you get, explosive shot's going to blow up. So you're going to get that big burst right there. And you just go right into that 3 rotation. And you're going to do a lot of damage. So as far as arena comps go, historically there are a few good hunter comps. As of 10.0.7, unfortunately, there is only one really viable hunter comp, and that's because of how strong Ret Paladins are. So if you're playing a Marks Hunter, or honestly any spec of hunter, you have to play with a Ret Paladin to do the best that you can. Historically, there's other good comps. You can play jungle, which is Hunter Feral. You can play Thug Cleave, which is Hunter Rogue, or Shadow Priest Hunter. Those are all solid comps, but just right now in the current meta, I would just recommend playing Ret Hunter. So now I'm going to go over different add-ons that I use specifically for PvP. And there are a few, and I'll explain them in their functionality. So first is Gladius. Gladius is unit frames for your enemy team. So I'm going to join this arena really quickly just so I can show you what it looks like. So when the enemy team joins the game, you'll see on the right, or you can configure it to put it anywhere you want, the enemy team's unit frames, their class and spec, and it's going to show you other options like their trinkets, their racial abilities, as well as diminishing returns on them for different crowd controls. So this is really helpful for tracking your enemy's cooldowns, for knowing when your CC is going to sit, for when it's going to be shorter duration, and it's a must-have for anybody trying to do arena. The next add-on I use is called Lose Control. What this does is if you're in a CC like a Fear or a Stun, it'll show it over your character so you can visibly see it. I think Blizzard actually implemented something like this in their base UI, but I generally just use this add-on. Now for the next add-on, this is very important, Omnibar. Now Omnibar allows you to track enemy cooldowns. So I can customize it any way I want. I use 3 different bars, well actually 4, and they each have different kinds of abilities on them. So for example, I have a defensive bar. So what this does is I track enemy defenses on them. You can go through all of the enemy or all of the classes and you can check in whatever spells you want to track, and when they use them, they will pop up wherever you set it up. So I'm going to try to go ahead and see if I can test one of them. It's going to be kind of crazy because there's a lot of buttons, but so for example, I'm going to test, these are all the things I'm tracking in the trap section. So say you're fighting a priest as a hunter and they use Shadow Word Death, it'll pop up there and you now know they used it and how long until they have it back. This is a really handy add-on for doing arenas. The next one I'm going to cover is Omni CC. This is a cooldown count for you and your party members' frames. So for example here, if I used Feigned Death or Aspect of the Turtle, instead of just existing and showing my frame, it's going to show those debuffs or buffs on me. So I'm Feigned Death, that's my survival tactics. If I use Turtle there, it's going to show my turtle up there. And it's going to do the same for my teammate. So if my teammate is in a bubble or in a crowd control, it's going to show it over their frame there so I can see it easily. So now I'm going to go over Omni CD. This is essentially Omni Bar, but it tracks your party cooldowns instead of your enemy's cooldowns. So as you can see here, I have it set up for Lil Marv. He's a Windwalker monk, so I have it so I can see his Touch of Karma and his 2 defensive walls. Now you can customize this with whatever ability that you want to track. So for me, I can track their defensive cooldowns. If I'm playing with a druid, I can track when they have their stun so I don't have to ask. Their interrupts so we don't overlap. There's a lot of different things you can track with this. The last thing I'm going to cover is not a PvP specific add-on, but I use it for my interface, so I just wanted to cover it. Weak Auras lets you make different graphic displays covering, whatever you want to put on it. So I have a Weak Aura that I use here in the center of my screen that I will be linking in the description. Now what this does for me is it just gives me a better view on my health and focus. So as you can see, I'm casting my aim shot. It's going to show me how much focus is gone. Keeps me, so I can look at this, I can know how much focus I have. I also track certain things, like you just saw there. That's my proc for my scope. So you can track different things. I have it set up more for BM right now, but you can put different things on there, like the trick shots buff, so you don't got to look up here. And it's a really good Weak Aura. I'd recommend using it if you'd like this kind of display. So now finally I'm going to go over a few macros that I think you should use as hunter or marksmanship hunter specifically. First, for a general hunter macro suggestion is the @cursor macro. So what this does is it makes any of your targeted abilities go directly to your cursor without having to first click and then place it. So an example would be this. Say I want to put a freezing trap down. If I have it normally, right, you got to click on it and then you got to click again. With the @cursor macro, I could just press the bind once and it throws it to my target. So I use an @cursor macro for all of my traps. So you got flare, you got your tar trap, your freezing trap, and it makes it really quick and streamlined to just get your traps out quickly. Next, I'm going to go over stop casting macros. It's really important as a marksman hunter to get these built into a lot of your abilities. Now what this does is, since most of your main damaging abilities like rapid fire and aim shot are channels or casts, if I want to cast another spell and I don't have a stop casting macro, I'd have to cancel my shot and then use it. This kind of streamlines it. So for example, I'll give you an example here. I'm aim shotting and I'm trying, you see that? I'm trying to scatter shot, but it won't go off until my cast is over. So what these macros do is it'll stop the cast and use the ability. So for example, here I'm casting, I exhilarate. It just boom, it uses it. Casting turtle, it uses it. So the spells I use this for almost every ability. The ones I'll go over them real quick. You got all your traps, your counter shot, your defensive cooldown, that's turtle and exhilaration, as well as your scatter shot. So all of your abilities, when you put the stop casting in there, there's no chance that you won't be able to get it off because you're in the middle of a cast. Now on to Arena 1, 2, 3 and Party 1, 2, 3 macros. What these do is they will directly put whatever ability you're using on the target of your party or on the target of your enemy team. So my freedom right here, Master's Call, I have an @me, I have an @party1 and an @party2. So what that does is when I press the me, it will freedom me. If I press the party1, the first member will get it, and then the second one will be the second one. So this way, instead of having to click on them and use it, I can just do one keybind and it'll get it done. So for these macros, I use it for freedom and roar of sacrifice. And then there's similar, like I said, similar macros for the enemy team. So you can do @arena 1, 2, 3 instead of party. And I use those for my interrupts and my stuns and my scatter. So instead of having to, I'm shooting this guy, click over here and kick him, I could just press one button and then it'll just kick right to him. I can stun right to him and scatter right to them. So those, you don't really need to use 1, 2, 3 macros. Some people choose to use target and focus macros when dealing with enemies, but it's really just up to preference. Now the last macro I'm gonna go over really quickly is the cancel aura turtle macro. And what this does is, for example, say I'm in an arena, I have to use my turtle, and now I'm topped off, right? So I don't need to be in turtle anymore. I could come up here and try to find it and click it off, or you could just press this bind, this macro, and it will cancel it for you. So it's really important to have this so you can cancel it really quickly if you need to. The last thing I'm going to cover really quickly is pets. Now I already made a video on my channel that I will link in the description that really goes in depth on what pets are good, when you want to use them, what situations, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it's just important to know that you want a couple different pets. You want a cunning pet with mortal wounds, a ferocity pet with mortal wounds, tenacity with mortal wounds, and an undead cunning with mortal wounds. So for marksman, if you have all of those, you're set to do any situation. Now for me personally, the pets that I chose to use, I use a raptor for my cunning freedom, I use an undead raptor for the undead cunning freedom, I use a scorpion for my ferocity, and a hydra for the tenacity. Those are just the ones I use. There are different models you can use, different kinds of pets, and like I said, if you go watch that video, you'll get all the information you need when having to think about pets. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I did a good job explaining Marksman Hunter. If you have any feedback or any other questions for me, please feel free to reach out. I have my stream in the description. I stream regularly. I also have Discord and a stream email, which I will provide as well. I also have everything I've talked about in this video in the description, and that includes my list of add-ons, the different talent trees, as well as the different macros that I use. So those are all going to be in the description. You can just get them right there. And finally, I'm going to put a link to my pet video if you are interested in finding out more about that. So until next time, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.